Hello everyone, my name is Genesia Waters and my group and I will be presenting about commas. The general definition of commas is a punctuation mark indicating a pause between parts of a sentence or separating items in a list. Specifically, be explaining the use of commas in dependent clauses. Dependent clauses are put together to form a sentence and at least one of the clauses relies on the other. For example, clause number one, when I go to the movies. Clause number two, I spend too much money. I spend too much money when I go to the movies. When the dependent clause comes first, it should always be followed by a comma. For example, when I go to the movies, comma, I spend too much money. Full stop. But if the main clause comes first, no comma is required. When I go to the movies, comma, I spend too much money. Full stop. But if the main clause comes first, no comma is required. For example, I spend too much money when I go to the movies. Full stop. In cases when a dependent clause is within an independent clause, then a comma is needed. A dependent clause can be nestled inside an independent clause. When a dependent clause is within the independent one, it's an interpreter. An interpreter simply breaks the flow of a sentence, and a dependent clause can be an interpreter. We typically use commas both before and after most interpreters. Yet, like I mentioned before, you could use dashes or parentheses. In my example, which is the man, comma, breathing heavily, comma, couldn't call for help. As you can see, the man, comma, breathing heavily, comma, the comma comes before the breathing and after heavily. Now I'll read it again. The man, comma, breathing heavily, comma, couldn't call for help. Full stop. We will now have Miss Ireland discussing comma use in a series of items.
Comma in a series. Commas is used to separate three or more words, phrases, clauses in a series. A conjunction goes between the last two items of the series, while some authorities say that the comma before the conjunction is optional. Leaving it out may cause confusion, so it is better to include it. Words use commas to separate three or more words, phrases, or clauses. For example, this morning I woke up, comma, got dressed, comma, brushed my teeth, comma, and ate breakfast. Clauses. In fact, the bus will be full of people who got dressed, comma, who brushed their teeth, comma, and who ate breakfast, comma.
Fanboys stands for the coordinating conjunctions for, and, nor, but, or, yet, and so. Fanboys is a handy reminder device for remembering these coordinating conjunctions. These words function as connectors. They can connect words, phrases, and clauses like this. Words: I am almost dressed and ready. Phrases: my socks are in the living room or under my bed. Clauses: they smell really bad, so they will be easy to find. Notice the comma in the final example. You should always have a comma before fanboys that join two independent clauses, two subjects and two verbs that make up two complete thoughts. Look carefully at the next two sentences to see two independent clauses separated by a comma plus fanboys. You wore a lovely hat, but you didn't wear anything else. My hamster loved to play, so I gave him a hula hoop. If you do not have two subjects and two verbs separated by the fanboys, you do not need to insert the comma before the fanboys. In other words, if the second grouping of words isn't a complete thought, don't use a comma. Try reading the words after fanboys all by themselves. Do they make a complete thought? You wore a lovely hat but didn't wear anything else. My hamster loved to play and often ate marshmallows. You can read your own writing in the same way. Read what comes after fanboys all by itself. If it's a complete thought, you need a comma. If not, you don't. Now, let's talk about direct quotations or direct speech. In direct speech, various punctuation conventions are used to separate the quoted words from the rest of the text. This allows a reader to follow what's going on. Here are the basic rules. The words that are actually spoken should be enclosed in inverted commas. Example, he's very clever, you know. In British English, the usual style is to use single inverted commas, but it is not wrong to use double ones. Example, he is very clever, you know. Every time a new speaker says something, you should start a new paragraph. Example, they think it's a more respectable job, said Joe. I don't agree, I replied. There should be a comma, full stop, question mark, or exclamation mark at the end of a piece of speech. This is placed inside the closing inverted comma or commas. Example, can I come in? He asked. Just a moment, she shouted. You're right, he said. I didn't expect to win. If direct speech comes after the information about who is speaking, then you should use a comma to introduce the piece of speech, placed before the first inverted comma. Example, Steve replied, no problem. If the direct speech is broken up by information about who is speaking, then you need a comma or a question mark or exclamation mark to end the first piece of speech and a full stop or another comma before the second piece before the inverted comma or commas. Example, you're right, he said. It feels strange. Thinking back, she said, he didn't expect to win. No, he cried. You can't leave now.
Another rule for using commas is use a pair of commas in the middle of a sentence to set off clauses, phrases, and words that are not essential to the meaning of the sentence. Use one comma before to indicate the beginning of the pause and one at the end to indicate the end of the pause. Well, first of all, if you can remove the phrase or clause changing the essential meaning of the sentence, then it is not essential. Then in this case, you will need to show this with the use of commas. Okay, let me show you some examples of phrases and words that are not essential to the sentence. Clause. That Tuesday, which happens to be my birthday, is the only day that I am available to meet. Phrase. This restaurant has an exciting atmosphere. The food, on the other hand, is rather bland. Word. I appreciate your hard work. In this case, however, you seem to have overexerted yourself. Examples. Freddie came, if something or someone is sufficiently identified, the description that follows if we already know which essential and should be surrounded by commas. The description is not essential. Let's look at more examples. Hence the commas. Freddie, the boy who has a limb was in an auto accident. We do not know which boy is meant without further description. Therefore, no commas are used. Hence the commas. This leads to a persistent problem. The boy who has a limb was in an auto accident. My brother Bill is here. We do not know which boy is meant now without further description. See how adding two commas changes that sentence's meaning. This leads to a persistent problem. Look at the following sentence. Is here. My brother Bill is here. Careful writers and readers understand that the first sentence two commas changes I have more than one brother. Meaning. The commas in the second sentence means Bill, Bill is here. Only brother. Careful writers and readers in the first sentence, that the first sentence Bill means essential information. More than one brother. It identifies the which commas of the two in the second sentence or more that brothers Bill I am speaking of. Only brother. This is why no commas include in the first sentence. Bill is essential information. It identifies which of the two or more brothers I am speaking of. This is why no commas enclose Bill. But then in the second sentence, Bill is non-essential information. Whom else but Bill could I mean? Hence the commas. Careful though, comma misuse is nothing to take lightly and can lead to misinterpretation.
Thank you for watching our video
We hope that you enjoy it.
and learn something.